I think this question about how we work with educators, or really anyone, to feel like they're part of the solution rather than someone's imposing a solution on them, is critical to the way we've been operating in many organizations, and particularly in schools and education over the last few decades that I'm aware of. And if you look at the work in community organization and social justice movements across the world, work of people like Peter Block or Margaret Wheatley and others, they have come to understand that the people in the community have the solutions for their community, but they generally have not had the voice in the community. No one's asked them. So there's always this sense that somebody's coming in to impose. Now because that's a history of what's going on, whether or not that happens to be true at this moment in time, people do not trust whoever it is that's coming in, the outsider who's coming in to say, you know, we want to work with you to figure out what's going on. What they hear are mandates from authority figures who have in the past imposed, policies or initiatives or procedures or practices on them, which those teachers may have known at the time were not going to work, or weren't going to work well, or maybe they didn't even know how to do them, and yet they weren't receiving the support to be able to do them. So you have a history that you're dealing with. That history doesn't just go away because now you suddenly want people to help you out and figure out what to do. So this notion of creating a collaboration, a partnership with teachers, is one beautiful goal. And one side of that story that I just told that makes that difficult is the history of how authority and other people with maybe very good intentions have behaved towards people in difficult situations in the past. That's one issue. On the other side of the issue are teachers who over many years, many years, have believed that they should be able to base their teaching on their preferences, on what they think, on what they want to do. And part of the reason we have a standards movement in the world, at least in the United States, and I think somewhat in Canada too, this movement towards a standard of excellence education and so forth, is partly because at some point we came to realize that it's not just individual preference that is going to ensure that all children have a rich and robust education, that there's some balance between the individual's preference and what we are learning over the past 50 years about how people learn, about how the brain works, about what strategies actually seem to be more and more effective, about how cultural differences and gender differences affect how we learn, and so forth and so on. If you do not incorporate that in that knowledge base that is very robust now into your practices because you like teaching the way you like teaching, then you're part of the problem. So it's a balance between these things. It's not teachers are, bad and need to be removed. That's not the issue. It's not that teachers are have complete autonomy to do whatever they want. We live in an interdependent world. Teaching is complex, very complex. Managing a system as large as an education system, like the one you have in Ontario, for example, is complex. There are many moving pieces, many variables. So what you do about that is you create partnerships, create many opportunities for conversations across roles, across schools, across disciplines, with the community, with the children. You incorporate all the players into ongoing conversations that are deeply respectful, truly inquisitive, and geared toward examining present beliefs and present practices, looking for evidence of what happens when you perpetuate those practices, who they impact in a positive way, who's not impacted at all, and who is losing out. It's more nuance in the conversation than it is, this is the way to go. There's no panacea, the work is too complex. So the questions have to become more nuanced, and our study of what's going on, ongoing within the school community for the children in their care, informed by the research, the things that are happening in other schools, and so forth. The worst thing I think you can do is say, you know, this is a best practice. It worked over here. We're going to impose it on your school and expect the same results. Because best practices, as Edgar Schein says, are irrelevant. Best practices come about because a particular situation emerges, and the people in that situation figure out what's working, what works in that situation, and help each other resolve a problem. When we try to transplant that best practice from this place where it originated organically out of need over here, we often just transplant the superficial aspects of that, not the essential process that allowed that to take place. Every organization has to go through the process, the essential organic process of solving their own issues. That doesn't mean you don't pay attention to what worked over there. You learn from it, but you don't try and superimpose it on another school or situation.